My name is Jason Wayne Kerr, and I served in the Army from 2003 to 2008.
Why did you join the Army?
I joined the Army right after September 11th, basically. I had been going down a path with the Marine Corps when I was in college, and I ended up turning down my commission. I didn't pursue that all the way. And I went to work, and I was working in the hotel industry when September 11th happened, and my philosophy on that, it really tore me up that I always wanted to serve, and I always said I would if there was a reason to. That was my reason to. I felt that it was a lot like, probably very akin to what a lot of men and women felt after Pearl Harbor. I just couldn't, there wasn't any amount of my time or money that I could donate to, just as an example, like New York firefighters. There wasn't anything I felt I could do monetarily to fix how I felt, so I decided to serve, and I did.
So where were you stationed when you joined?
So I actually joined the Army Reserves, and I was, like I said, I was already graduated college. I had a career, completely willing to leave all that behind. That wasn't the problem. But the most direct path that I could actually take and not completely uproot my whole family was the Army Reserves, and I also knew that that was a direct path to what I wanted to do, which was honestly enlist and get over there. And by over there I mean Afghanistan, Iraq, and I kind of wanted to get in the fight, to be really honest with you. So I joined the Army Reserves, then I volunteered. 2003 I actually volunteered for a deployment with a unit that was not from Davenport. So I was in the 389th Combat Engineers in Davenport, Iowa, and I heard of a transportation company that was mobilizing out of Nebraska and western Iowa, and so I augmented their unit, and they accepted my request, and I was deployed pretty shortly thereafter.
So how long were you deployed for?
16 and a half months for actually my first and only deployment was 16 and a half months in Iraq.
So what was your training for the Army or Marines like?
Okay, so for the Army, I initially went in as an 88 Mike, which would be a truck driver, anything with wheels, all the way from the biggest semi that you could imagine, a tractor trailer combo, all the way down to, believe it or not, my military license had a John Deere Gator on it. So pretty much anything with wheels. As soon as, and that was also one of the shortest AITs, which is the advanced training after after basic training. I was happy with that. I already had a CDL in the civilian life. I wasn't afraid of driving any trucks. To me, it was just the quickest path. And, everybody's heard about the IEDs and all that kind of stuff, and really moving equipment and all the different classes of material was the front line. However, as soon as I volunteered with the transportation company, I soon realized I did what's called a cross level, where I trained into fuel management and fuel handling, and I put two and two together pretty quick. So if there's a truck driving company that's also qualified in fuel handling, pretty sure they were going to want us to haul fuel, and I was right. So what I ended up doing, which was fine, all the jobs have to get done. I had a little bit different mentality, so I actually volunteered immediately for a gun truck platoon, and I was actually in charge of the crew served weapons, and I was accepted into gun truck platoon. It wasn't just an automatic thing. And then I did a lot of training, which would be like Cav Scout training for, you name it, reconnaissance, IED, counter IED missions, convoy support, convoy escorting, which we did a lot of. And frankly, I was pretty darn good at that job. So that's what I ended up doing. Was I was a gunner on a Humvee.
Did your service influence your career after you enlisted?
Yes, and in my case, it really influenced before and after. But to answer your question specifically, afterwards, I came back after deployment, probably went back to work a little too quickly. I had more time that I could have taken. I was wounded in 2006. I had some issues with that, being injured like that. And I came home, I went back to the hotel business, and there was just night and day. There was, I can explain it to you like this. I walked around for a long time trying to figure out why every single person on earth changed so much while I was gone. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. I had a Vietnam vet just the other day. I think you guys talked to Chuck Morrell the other day, and he's a good friend of mine. Another good friend of ours named David Woods kind of grabbed a hold of me, and he kind of pulled me out of the fire. He's like, do you suppose, just hypothetically, that maybe you changed a little bit and everybody else didn't change quite as much as you think they did? Maybe it was you a little bit? And I'm like, I don't see it. I just got shot, blown up, did a kind of a crappy job. I did a good job, but you see where I'm going with it now? Yeah. It wasn't necessarily everyone else. I definitely had been through some changes, some for better, some for worse, and I take them all. But needless to say, I didn't have what I would consider my edge in the hospitality business anymore. I still love the people that I worked with. I still had customer service. It just wasn't the same. So I actually transitioned. I started working for the state of Iowa as a veterans representative, helping veterans overcome barriers to like employment. That was a pretty good gig for a while. I started up doing some hospitality and medium business consulting. And the point to all of that is being able to, something that you hear in the military a lot, and in my case specifically the Army, is adapt and overcome. I had to carve out a new path in my career to provide for myself and my family and my friends, and I had to adapt and overcome and realize that the path that I was on it took me a long time to feel like it wasn't a failure, but it was just turning over, like just walking through a different door. So because of a lot of my training and my mentality of adapting and overcoming an adversity like that, I was able to fall back on my roots, do the medium business consulting, hospitality consulting, and work for the state for a while. And also, I don't work for the state anymore. I was able to actually move on from that, and now I've got a blueberry farm, and the consulting is going pretty well. And I really credit a lot of that to my upbringing. Being a Boy Scout myself helped me a lot. The military helped me a lot. College helped me a lot. All of those things together, individually, those things aren't going to forge that path for anybody. But in my case, I took everything that was in front of me and just kind of kept going like this until it made sense. And then that's kind of how I ended up with it. So long answer, but that's how I kind of carved that out.
So do you have any stories, events that impacted you like significantly from your time there?
So I had mentioned that I was in Boy Scouts. My father was also a veteran. He's passed away, but he was a naval veteran, a Navy veteran in Vietnam, and he was in Boy Scouts. And something that he learned in the Navy was Morse code for SOS. And Morse code for SOS is dit, 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 da, 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 dit, 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 3, 3, 3. And something that you learn in scouts and the military and all these different things is groups of 3 are a signal of distress. So SOS just happens to be 3 sets of 3, right? So And I did tell this story at my Eagle Scout board, as a matter of fact. So I'm an Eagle Scout. Well, my dad taught me at one of my very first scout campouts, SOS. And we all had these really cool flashlights that had that button on top. Never really knew what it was for, so you can like turn it on, but it doesn't come on unless you push the button. So we all learned SOS. Great. I go on to become an Eagle Scout. I go on to college. I go on to join the Army. And lo and behold, that's the only Morse code that I know. But one night we were traveling on an MSR, an ASR, which is an alternate supply route. And we were in northern Iraq. And we were escorting a fuel convoy from Mosul to Tal Afar. And that fuel was for the 1st AD, 1st Armored Division tanks and Bradleys and some Strykers and Humvees. Everything in Iraq runs off of JP8 jet fuel. It's really no diesel. Everything runs off of jet fuel. So we get ready for the mission, and we take off, and we do our radio checks and our equipment checks and our weapons test fire and everything. And we get about 5 miles from the FOB, which is a forward operating base, and all of a sudden we realized that we didn't have any communication with battle space on our SINGAR's radio. And 5 miles isn't a lot, like if you're in DeWitt, Iowa, but 5 miles outside the wire in Iraq is a long ways. There was no turning back. So we thought we could fix the problem. We tried a couple different things. You've probably seen a CB or a radio before where there's several different channels. Well, a military radio, there's not only several different channels, but there's encryption on every single channel. So you have another thing that kind of looks like a radio called an ANCD, and you have to plug that into your radio. That's got an encryption code that then sets your frequency for the mission. Bear with me, I'm getting there. This is a good one, okay? We had an improper ANCD fill, so we could talk to each other in the truck. So we could talk to the gun trucks, and the tanker trucks could talk to each other, and we could use another internal, it's called an ICOM, which is like an intercom, and we could talk to each other, but we couldn't communicate with battle space. That's a problem. That would be our medevac, our air support, our situational, our sit reps, our situation reports. Nobody even knew we were in the area without those reports. So we're going along, and we're like, okay, this isn't ideal, but let's just keep going. We're about 4 miles long. There's about 30 military semis pulling fuel tanks. And then plus our Humvees, the gun trucks were mixed in there. And we kind of made the decision. I was the lead gunner. My gun truck was the first truck in the convoy, and we were in charge of all the communications. I was in charge of air support because I was up on top of the truck. I could see helicopters and jets and all that. We thought, well, we're already out here. This mission's very important. This was an emergency fuel run. They had to have this fuel or their tanks couldn't go anywhere. And that's a problem in a battle space, right? All right, so let's just keep going, and when we get there, there was a station that we could stop at, and we could probably get an ANCD from them. It was about halfway. Well, before we got there, I had to stop the convoy. There was an IED right in the middle of the road, and it was a tack strip IED. I'll get into that some other time, I suppose. So it's a victim-operated IED. Hill over here, road right here, perfect choke point. We're 4 miles long. You don't just do a 3-point turn and turn around something that's 4 miles long. So I turned around, used my flashlight, flashed the convoy, everybody stopped. Now what do we do? This is not a good situation. You don't want to stop. Now you're a sitting duck. We're in a choke point, and the first thing that popped into my head was, how can I get a hold of somebody? And I remembered that scout camp out when my dad told the SOS story and taught us all SOS. And I thought, okay, so I know SOS. Does anybody else know SOS? Boy, I hope so. But how do I get them, how do I tell them SOS if I can't call on the radio? So, flashlight. Pulled out my Surefire flashlight. I took my night vision goggles and I turned them, at first I turned them on to infrared setting, and I looked around for any type of a strobe off of an aircraft. Nothing. And I had no idea what was in the air because I had no communication. So I turned my night vision back on and I scanned, and I thought maybe I saw something, maybe it was a shooting star, not sure. Turned off my night vision goggles and I just took my flashlight straight up in the air and I started doing SOS. Dit, 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 da, 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 dit, dit, dit. And I did it a little bit slower cadence than you normally would, because I figured, my dad also told me, hey, even if somebody doesn't know it, but they see you signaling, they're gonna at least know you're there. So I'm like, okay. So I start doing that, and I start doing that, and I start doing that. I'm not getting any response. I didn't want to pop a flare, because a flare works both ways. So once you illuminate the area so that you can see, they can also see you, and that's a problem. A bunch of tanks of gas sitting there, right? Or jet fuel, but. So I talked to my crew. I had a driver and a truck commander, and I said, why don't we do what we're not supposed to do? Let's drive around this bomb, and let's go ahead and go up the road and look for some help. What else are we gonna do? We can't really use the buddy system, all those great things that we're taught in the military and in scouts. We didn't want anybody else to drive around this bomb. What if it went off? So sometimes there's a time and a place to break a rule, so we broke the rule. We left the convoy, we had another gun truck come up front for forward security, and we drove around the bomb, and we started going down the road. Now that's a problem. 4 miles of vehicles, that's one thing, but one vehicle by themselves is out of place and could easily be mistaken for a combatant or even a civilian, a civilian on the battlefield that's not supposed to be there because there was a curfew. So we made the decision to run with our headlights on, which is crazy most of the time, but the headlights on a Humvee are kind of distinct, and we're thinking, hey, maybe somebody will at least put 2 and 2 together that this isn't just like a orange and white taxi or something out here, and that there's a reason. And if we're by ourselves and not 2, somebody might realize that there's a problem. We're going down the road. The whole time I'm going down the road and I'm pointing my flashlight straight ahead, doing SOS, I'm kind of fanning it out. All of a sudden, I kid you not, I see a flash over in the distance. Stop, turn off our lights, hunkered down, got down in my turret, popped back up, did SOS again. It came back. Dit, 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 dot, 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 dit, dit, dit. I didn't know if they knew SOS or if they were just doing what I was doing. Put my NVGs down and it was out of range. I couldn't see what was up there, but I said, well, lock and load. I took the 50 cal, pointed it right at it, and I said, let's go. So we left the roadside, went out in the desert. Sure enough, here's an Abrams tank and a Humvee out in the middle of the desert. And we're approaching with caution because we know what they are, they don't necessarily know what we are, right? So we pull up, I'm flashing the whole time, I'm waving my arms. It sounds weird, but I'm like pointing at the truck like, it's a Humvee, look at this, please don't shoot at us. So we pull up next to the tank. The other Humvee immediately did the right thing. They pulled around and pulled some rear security for us. We pulled up to the tank like this. The platoon sergeant for the tank pops up out of the hatch, and I popped up out of my hatch, and he's like, what in the F are you guys doing? Well, let me tell you, do you happen to have an ANCD with you? Yes, we do. Thank God. So I tell him the story of, hey, we didn't have a choice. We can't sit here long. We need your ANCD, but we're not even going to screw with that right now. We're going to head back. We're going to go back, get with our convoy. We need to take care of the IED. We need to get everybody a good fill so we can communicate, and we need to Charlie Mike, which is continue mission. Roger that. He goes, but real quick, now keep in mind, we've got CVCs, combat helmets on with headphones and everything and microphones, but we couldn't talk to each other, and we're talking over a Humvee motor and the engine of a tank, so we're screaming at each other. He's like, that was SOS, right? And I'm like, yeah, roger that, Sergeant. And he's like, how the hell do you know SOS? I'm like, Boy Scouts. He goes, oh, no shit, I'm an Eagle Scout. I said, oh, me too. He's like, well, let's talk about that later. I'm like, that'd be great. Let's get out of here. So out in the middle of Iraq, in the middle of a bad situation, I meet another Eagle Scout that's driving a tank that knew SOS, and the whole thing worked out. And it actually was because of me being in Scouts and me, I'm getting a little choked up, but me listening to my dad, who was a veteran, that taught me that, and Scouts instilled a lot of those, you know, it kind of solidified it, and I'll be damned, I'm pretty sure that saved my life one night. Not to mention, we had about 60 other people on that mission, because every truck had at least 2 people, if not 3 people in it. So I would say that story is a very mild story. It's not blood and guts. It's not whatever hua gung-ho type crap. But for me, I always took scouting in the military and my upbringing very seriously. And if that doesn't tie it all together, I don't know what does. But moving forward, you know, when you're young and you're learning and you're in Scouts and you're in 4-H and school and church and youth group and all those things, you always think you're trying to do the right thing and be a good person, right? But sometimes it does take one single event that takes everything, molds it together, and then spits out an end product. And it's the one event in my life that I look back on and I'm like, yep, listening to mom and dad makes sense, and there's a reason for it. And yep, paying attention when people are, what you might just think it's just a merit badge, or it might be an Eagle required merit badge, or maybe it's just a seminar at your job, or maybe it's a safety training at a hotel. An event like that really tells you, yeah, listen, pay attention, trust your gut, but trust your training. Told you that was a little bit of a long one, but I love that story and I can't wait to tell it to some other Scouts. My boys know it, my niece knows it, and it's easy to get choked up thinking back about, you know, Dad kind of being with me when I needed him that night. So
did you meet anyone in your time of service that actually, impacted you significantly?
Yeah, there was several, but there was a female soldier that I helped out a little bit. I didn't know how big of an impact I made on her at the time. She was struggling with weapons qualification, and I kind of thought that there was a little something else to it. And so I spent a little time, talked to her, I asked her if I could help. And I kind of started to think that she wasn't qualifying because she maybe wasn't sure if she could handle deployment. So she maybe thought that if she didn't do so well along the way, it would get her out of it. She was having some, you know, anybody would be having some anxiety about a deployment. But I helped her through a few things. I helped her qualify with her rifle. That's one of my things. I'm good at showing people marksmanship. Didn't really think too much of it, and halfway through deployment, I hadn't seen her since Fort Riley, and here I see her in Iraq, and she's like, you know, you do realize you saved my life, right? And I'm like, what's up, battle? You know, like, I just helped you shoot your gun. You know, it's just something that you got to do. I mean, this sounds harsh, being an Eagle Scout and everything, but, you know, screw first aid and communication and all those things. It comes down to if there's one thing you have to be able to do, is drink water and shoot your gun. So I kind of just helped you with that, and that's all. She goes, no. She goes, I was actually thinking about taking my life. And you might not think that you did a whole lot for me, but you gave me the confidence to not only qualify with my weapon, but kind of get my act together and realize that I was here to serve my country, and you made me realize that somebody cares that I'm here. And I said, well, that's very important to me that you're here, and I'm glad that you're here. And it just was a short conversation, but I've never shook that off. I mean, to just think that almost in passing, one little thing that I helped somebody with one day, you think about saving somebody's life, you know, you see Black Hawk Down or you see the movies, right? Turns out I saved somebody's life just by doing a good deed daily, right? So I did. I just did a good deed, and then I had a gal tell me that because of me, she was still here. I think there's a lot of heroes. I've met Toby Keith over in Iraq. I mean, there's people that I've met. I mean, I could go into that, but that gal right there really shows you how delicate things can be sometimes. And again, tying it into scouts, I mean, I don't take it lightly. Do a good turn daily. I mean, it really paid off that time. And I don't know if she knows it to this day, but I think she did more for me than I did for her. I think if you asked her, she would say the opposite. But just being a good person doesn't cost you anything. I do want to say something. I don't always, it took me a couple days to convince myself I was just going to come in here and kind of, you know, sometimes I get asked some things about my service and I get clammed up and really quiet and I don't want to talk about it. In this scenario, I was really excited about the SOS story. I mean, that you can tell that I was into that story, and maybe it's a little bit long, but that's okay. I don't always have an easy time, like, oh, I'm a veteran. Oh, you know, I saw and did some things that I still don't want to talk about. What I do want to, what something like this helps me realize is the good things that can come out of it. And I think it's important for me. There were good times. There was the humanitarian mission. We gave medical supplies and school supplies to some school kids, and we found weapon stashes that were going to be used against us and other people that we were able to get off the streets. And firefighters, policemen, EMTs, soldiers, Marines, all that. It's not the stuff that you see on TV. It's not even the stuff that you think you're going to get out of an experience or give. I just wanted to give. I wanted to give to my country, right or wrong. I don't want to say this harshly, but right or wrong, I wanted revenge for our country for 9/11. My heart came out of it a lot differently. I'm just being honest. I wanted to even the score, and I wanted to get in the fight and do what I could. I don't regret that. That's exactly what I wanted to do, and I did. But what I gained from it was a very, very different outlook on things. And being a good dad, being a good teacher, being excited to tell the next generation of scouts the SOS story. You know, I almost didn't make it. You know, June 12th, 2006, I almost didn't make it. So I worry that I'm not the perfect citizen or the perfect dad or the, you know, sometimes I worry if somebody's going to look up to me, are they looking up to the right person? But what I can tell you is that I do not believe in the word someday. I don't like that word. I don't like to say it. I don't like it when somebody says, like, hey, you want to go fishing? Oh man, I got to work some overtime and this and that. Like, I get that, but don't say someday. Let's make a plan. I work overtime. I get off tomorrow at 7. I take a nap, then we can go fishing. Or next Tuesday we can go fishing. But don't say someday, because none of us have someday. None of us have tomorrow. We don't know what's coming. I almost had all those somedays and all those tomorrows taken away. So it really made me look at things differently with a sense of urgency to try to be the best person that I can. I worry constantly that that's not enough, but it's all I've got. I've only got one life to give, right? So that is my biggest takeaway from everything, is just someday isn't there. Someday is a terror. I swear a lot. I mean, I swear a lot. I don't think I've slipped any in today. I think I've done all right, but the one word that I can't stand is someday. I won't hear it.